Hey everyone, welcome back to Mind Keys. It's been far too long, and I'm really excited to share this video with you. This is going to be, I think, a really juicy, interesting, kind of unique take and a unique piece of content for a lot of you out there. So it's been a while. I have a couple things to say before we go ahead and dive into the content, and I'll leave you a timestamp in the description down below, and probably a timestamp here in the video as well, so you know when to start the content if you don't want to hear the kind of house cleaning, housekeeping stuff. But just suffice to say that I'm really happy to be back, really happy to be sharing with you, and this is going to be a good one. So watch on. So before we go ahead and dive into the good news, I figured I would just kind of get the less than great news out of the way first and kind of fill you in on kind of the challenging aspects of what I've been going through so that you're just kind of a bit up to speed with what's going on with me. So first things first, I want to just acknowledge that I had made some commitments and some, given my word here on the channel that I would start to upload content more regularly. And I'm pretty sure I said that in the last video I put up about microdosing. So first of all, I just want to acknowledge that I did that, and then there's been this huge gap where I've not been making content, and I want to let you know why that is. So, long story short, I've been struggling with some health issues. I'm not exactly sure what they are. I'm still kind of working with doctors to kind of nail it down and get it all figured out. But it's basically been something that's impacted my cognition a lot. So, my ability to think, my ability to focus, my ability to use my brain well has been severely impacted. Because of that, I just haven't been able to, not only have I not had the motivation or kind of been in the mood, but I really haven't had the cognitive focus and clarity that I need in order to be able to communicate clearly with you and use my words well, use my communication skills well, my hypnosis skills well, and to just think on the fly. I'm still obviously new at being on a camera, and it takes a little extra focus and a little extra effort to be able to think clearly while staring into a camera instead of a person's face with a light on my face. It's all very awkward and very unhuman, shall we say. So it takes extra mental effort, which means that I really need my mental A game in order to be able to make these videos for you. And unfortunately, I just haven't been there. It's been kind of heartbreaking and upsetting and frustrating, but that's kind of just the truth. So that's been a bit of a bummer. And that's really impeded my ability to kind of move forward with making content for you guys more regularly. So the next thing that's kind of been an impediment to making more videos for you guys is that I don't have anymore, but I had a very old, very slow computer. I was using a 2010 MacBook, not one of the pros, but one of those white plastic kind of budget models from 10 years ago, 11 years ago now. So the thing was cool for kind of just basic web browsing, that kind of a thing. But when it came to shooting video and kind of editing it, bouncing it out, rendering it, all that stuff, getting it up for you, it took me forever. And a lot of the videos that you've probably seen were actually filmed on my phone. And also, that's kind of less than ideal too. So I've been working a lot to save up and get a computer. I got one of the new M1 Max, and now this thing is plenty fast to be able to record, edit, get content up to you in a timely fashion. So more good news in that sense that that's another obstacle that's turned around, and now I'm going to be able to start to make more content more easily for everyone. So it's really been my intention and kind of my prayer to, as Aubrey Marcus would say, be fit for service, to be cognitively, spiritually, emotionally aligned and ready to be able to serve and communicate with you and really give my best and deliver all this content and really start to coach again and start to deliver what it is that I have to share and serve those who really resonate with me and resonate with this message and want to engage this work, because it's amazing. And so it's been my prayer to just get myself back into a place where I feel fit for service, both, personally, internally, and then also physically. So I'm happy to share with you that I do feel fit for service again. And I feel ready to really begin to start delivering messages and content on a much more regular basis. So it's my hope and my intention to start delivering content 2 to 3 times a week and busting out these videos. And part of the way I'm going to start doing that is I'm going to start just shooting videos here in my bedroom on my laptop, because I've got a better microphone here, so I've got better audio for you. I've got a camera that's good enough. It's not great. And, pardon the less than professional background here. It's nothing thrilling or exciting, I realize, but hopefully the content will more than make up for it. And you'll start to get a sense of who I am, my work, what I'm about, the ideas that I'm working with, and kind of where I'm coming from. And if that resonates for you, great. And if that doesn't, that's fine too. But for now, in order to kind of get content out to you more regularly, I'm going to be focusing on just getting the content out, worrying less about the kind of visual aesthetics of it. And then down the line, once I get better at this, I get more comfortable on a camera, I get a better, setup for myself here. I'll be improving all of that and probably making more interesting videos to watch. But in the meantime, it's just going to be me talking head with a microphone, a lighting setup, and we'll be having some deep, amazing conversations about psychedelics, about integration work, about self-coaching, about how to rewire your brain, and all that kind of stuff. So that kind of leads me into my next topic here. So like a lot of content creators, I'm always trying to refine and kind of focus in what it is that I really want to communicate to you, and also what it is I'm up to here on the channel, just in terms of what are the focuses, what are the conversations that you and I are having here together. And so I've been thinking a lot about this, and I've really boiled it down to 4 kind of major areas of discussion. I'm sure that'll branch out into kind of all kinds of other little subtopics, and as stuff comes up, there will be kind of, branches on the tree, but these are kind of the 4 major kind of areas we'll be talking about here. So the first one is how to do self-guided integration work. So I want to teach you how to take, the psychedelic experiences you have, or even non-psychedelic experiences, like say you've had kind of mystical experiences from meditation or Vipassana retreats, or you just had like a random spiritual experience, or you've had these insights and these personal growth breakthroughs. Maybe you went to Tony Robbins' seminar and had a breakthrough and learned all this shit, and then it kind of came back to your life, and it kind of felt like this disconnect between how you are on a daily basis and how you'd like to be. This whole piece about integration, there's so much here, and it's such a huge area of work. And as I've started to really kind of engage it and really lean in with all the tools I have and really develop this out, I'm really feeling like this is where I can make the biggest contribution to you, where I can make the biggest contribution to the psychedelic community in general. And I feel like, honestly, a lot of the tools I have are unique for in the context of the psychedelic community, in the sense that a lot of the kind of psychedelic therapy world is based in a particular paradigm that is based in, kind of Jungian kind of perspectives and other kind of therapeutic perspectives. And I'm coming from a hypnosis and an NLP background. So it's much more personal development, much more working with the unconscious mind directly. So it's a different world. So point being that the first thing I want to talk about, and the primary topic here, will be teaching you how to work with your own unconscious mind to do integration work rapidly, so that you can take the lessons and the growth that you've had from these mystical experiences and turn them into lasting change for yourself. So that's point number 1. The second thing I really want to teach you just more broadly, is the same idea, but it's kind of the broader aspect of it, which is just how to rewire your brain. So in general, if there's some aspect of your life that isn't working for you, whether that's something internal, whether that's something, situational around you, whether that's some habit you have or something you want to change, are the basics of personal growth, self-development. I want to teach you how to actually rewire your brain. So this will be a lot of practical kind of, neurology, practical neuroscience, if you will, and applied skills. So this is a lot more than just kind of woo or just kind of broad concepts that you can apply. This is a lot of technique and science-driven application to actually changing how your brain functions, and that changing how you feel in your body, how you feel in your mind, how you behave, what kind of output comes out of you. So that's the second thing I want to teach. The third thing is kind of connected to these first 2, which is just broadly how to use psychedelics for personal development purposes. So in contrast to therapy, where the idea might be going deep into resolving a longstanding issue with, say, anxiety, depression, et cetera, personal development might might touch upon that, but is a much broader, thing in terms of, behaviors, mindsets, habits, routines, lifestyle design, all that kind of stuff falls under the umbrella, I think, of personal development. And if you're someone who's interested in psychedelics and touching these deep places in yourself, there's kind of this huge, interesting kind of area that hasn't been talked about or really touched upon yet, which is how do we connect the two? How do we take these deep, profound experiences we've been having, turn that into lasting personal development, personal change, personal healing, personal growth, leveling up in several areas of your life or in every area of your life altogether. So that's another thing we'll be talking about a lot in this channel. The fourth thing is a little more specific, but I feel like it's really important, and that's this: relationships. So, I started this channel talking about social anxiety issues, right? And some of you sub because of that, and I don't want to abandon that topic. But I think that really is a subset of what is something much more deep and much more pertinent for everyone. And what I've noticed is that pretty much universally, not only in my numerous psychedelic experiences and all my friends and all the conversations we've had, but also, when I'm reading online, if I'm on, Reddit and I'm reading all these accounts of people's experiences, there seems to be one underlying theme that is super pervasive through psychedelic experiences. It's certainly not the only thing, but it's a huge piece, and that's a piece of relationships. So whether we're looking at relationships in terms of our relationship to ourselves, relationships in terms of our relationship to, whatever the divine reality is, or the kind of higher level aspects of the universe, whether it's our relationship to other people around us or to society or to our family, to our friends, there's so much there that I feel like this is a huge part of the work of personal growth, of personal development, and of healing and awakening and transforming. So we'll be looking at relationships much more in depth on this channel as one of the kind of recurring themes. So hopefully that's something of value for you, or at least one of these 4 points would be a reason for you to watch and engage this channel more. So that's pretty much it for housekeeping, I think. Yeah, after checking my notes, that pretty much summarizes it up. So let me know what you think about all this. I'd be happy to, get any feedback from you about what you'd like to see or hear me talk about, or where you're at and what you're exploring or maybe stuck with. And let me know if this resonates. If you're interested in learning about how to do integration work yourself, or how to, just apply psychedelics for personal development in general. I assume you are if you're still watching my channel at this point. Or if you are interested in learning more about how to rewire your brain and kind of self-applied kind of neuroplasticity and self-applied neuroscience. Or if you're interested in kind of going deeper into the topic of relationships and how to improve your experience of your relationships in your life. So if any of that hits home for you, let me know below. That'd be super useful. And and we're going to go ahead and dive into the main content now for the video. Okay, so today's topic is the deepest lesson I learned in 2020, which I'm not saying lightly. 2020 was a whopper of a year for everyone. It's been heavy duty. And I knew it would be, just based on the astrology, coming in. Anyone who knows astrology, pays attention to it, knew that 2020 was going to be something serious. And for sure it has been. And there's a lot of powerful lessons that most of us have taken away from the last year. And just like everyone else, I went through the ride. I went through all the fear and all the worries and all the stress and all the frustrations and all the crazy nonsense online and all the weird, political stuff and all the weird social stuff. I rode the ride too. But there's one thing, now in hindsight, with the benefit of a few months of reflecting, that I learned that really summarizes all of it and is the deepest thing. And since, I just told you that I want to start talking more about relationship content here on the channel and, in every form, not just intimate, partnership relationships, but also friendships, family relationships, relationships to ourselves, relationships to the world around us, to the universe around us. This falls under that category. So the basic idea of what we're going to be talking about today is the idea of what you might be called good faith actors and bad faith actors. So some of you may be familiar with this content, especially if you're familiar with, say, Brett Weinstein, I believe. and his partner Heather, or anybody in that kind of Game B world. If you're not, I strongly encourage you to check them out. They are not only brilliant, they're of the highest caliber in terms of intellectual honesty and integrity, and they're just wonderful thinkers, speakers, and just beautiful human beings. So definitely recommend their channel. Uh, and this is a concept I got from watching his channels, and then I went to go study more about the idea of good faith and bad faith. So I'm going to try and summarize it here for you really quick. So the way I'm talking about good faith and bad faith today is perhaps a little more broad, perhaps a little more abstract than what you'll see online. So if you go look up good faith and bad faith actors, you'll see different kind of contexts where these terms come up. So you might see it in terms of game theory. You might see it in terms of kind of legalese and what it means in a legal context. You might see it in terms of, kind of different kind of specific academic contexts. So I might be using this in a little more of a diffuse, broad, kind of new sense than how it's traditionally been used. So I want to just first of all acknowledge that. But the basic idea with good faith and bad faith is this: that when it comes to two people interacting or two groups interacting, two parties interacting, there are people who operate in fidelity or in faithfulness to the context in which they're inside of the agreed way that they're relating. Then there are people who do not, or actors who do not, or agents who do not, however you want to think about it. Parties that operate in alignment with the kind of agreed rules of engagement, and parties who don't. And, that might seem obvious at first, but as I unpack this a little bit for you, hopefully it'll start to make more sense, because this is actually a really profound, deep idea. If you think about it for a moment, when two people are interacting, or two entities or parties, groups, whatever, are interacting, generally there's kind of either an implicit or an explicit, so an either implied or clearly stated kind of context or area of discussion. There's a reason that the two kind of entities are interacting, and whatever that reason is, whatever that context is that they're interacting inside of, generally that decides kind of what the boundaries of the interaction are, what the rules are, what the fair things to do are, what the unfair things to do are. And generally the idea is that for there to be a clean, positive interaction between these two parties, there needs to be an agreement on kind of the rules, on the boundaries, and on what the context is. So as simple as that sounds, this is so important, because it really is the context around our behavior that really formats how we behave. So you can think of any interaction, for example, this conversation here. So, we are having an interaction, even though I can't see you. And, and what is going on is that we're having a conversation here where I'm describing something to you, right? So there's a context, which is a communication, right? And that communication is, me passing on along my insights, my perspectives, my opinions to you, for you to kind of consider, evaluate, possibly learn something from, possibly in some way this might benefit your life or entertain you, or, be of value to you in some way, right? So in order for this interaction to work, that's kind of implicitly understood between us. You wouldn't be watching this if I wasn't offering you something that you found valuable or interesting. And I wouldn't be doing this if I didn't have something to say or something to contribute, right? So this whole thing, this video where you're watching right now, is built upon this kind of context of communication, and is inside the larger context of, say, YouTube videos in 2021 and how they're done, and personal development and coaching and how that's done. So there are these contexts around what it is I'm communicating with you right now in this conversation. Now, that's what makes this conversation work. And that's what formats what I say to you and what I don't say to you. For example, I don't tell you about all the other things that I might have thought about today, whether that is what I need to shop for, or whether that is, what I learned playing guitar today, or whatever it is. there's more information that falls outside the context of this conversation than there is inside, if that makes sense. So the context shapes our interaction here. I hope that makes sense. And that's true with every interaction we have out in the world and even internally, personally, inside of ourselves too. So context defines what shows up. Context defines content. Context defines experience. So in NLP and neurolinguistic programming, the way we think about that is what we call framing a conversation. So the frame is basically, if you want to imagine like a picture hanging on a wall inside a frame, the frame is the frame around the picture. Another way of thinking of that is it's the frame of reference. Again, so it's the context, frame of reference. I hope this is making sense. So the basic idea in NLP is that whoever controls the frame controls the content of the conversation. So, a classic example right now would be that, in 2021, there's a lot of exploration about power dynamics and unfair power dynamics socially, right? Now, what that is a particular frame where someone has a lot more clout than the other person, and there's an asymmetry to the interaction there that defines the character of that communication. I hope that makes sense. So I'm kind of rambling on here, but I just want to kind of hammer home that context matters deeply when it comes to the way two entities relate. At this point, you're probably like, Jesus, this guy fucking rambles. What's he trying to say? Well, let me get to the point here. In a bad faith scenario, in a bad faith situation, what you have is two people who are operating in different understandings of the context. And usually what that means is that one person is operating in fidelity or in good faith to what the kind of implied or clear context of the interaction is, but the other person or the other party isn't. So that other person, in other words, has some sort of maybe a secret agenda, if you will, or is not being sincere about their motivations or their drives, or has some kind of covert kind of thing that's driving their behavior that is other than the clearly agreed upon reason for interacting, right? So you have one person, I guess in theory it could be both too. It could be both parties are lying about the context that they're interacting inside of, and then both have kind of covert agendas. I think that's the simplest way to really sum up bad faith, is that when a person is in bad faith, or let's use people, because I can say entities and I can get all abstract, but let's just use people. When a person is in bad faith, they are insincere about their motivations. They're hiding something. They are driven by something other than just the clean, clear-cut showing up inside the context as it's originally understood, or kind of more explicitly understood. So, or there's a hidden agenda. I think those are all easy ways to kind of think about it and to understand it. And, by contrast, obviously someone who's in good faith is showing up cleanly and clearly to whatever the kind of agreed context or agenda is. Someone who's in good faith isn't bringing a bunch of other, stuff to the table and doesn't have a bunch of covert stuff. They're just showing up fully present, fully available for whatever the agreed interaction is. So that's kind of a basic definition of good faith, bad faith. Now that I have that defined, think back to 2020. Think back to all the kind of weird stuff going on online, on social media, all the stuff, funny business going on with the government, official narratives, and pushback on those official narratives, all the kind of gatekeeping and kind of social, stuff going on with people putting pressure on each other. To me, for me, in my own experience, in my own private life, in my own social interactions with different kind of groups of people, with different friends of mine, but also at large, the thing that really I took away from 2020 more than anything is a really crisp clarity, certainty, deep understanding that good faith and bad faith, that bad faith actors are real. It's a real thing. It's very common. And there's some nuances around that I want to convey to you, but it's deep. It's pervasive. It's super prevalent in our culture and in the world around us. And it's really, I think, incredibly important to come to terms with that and to start to understand that we are all surrounded by people who operate in bad faith, and not just people, but institutions, whole segments of society that operate in bad faith. And it's so much more empowering to know that and understand that ahead of time than it is to do what most good faith people do, which is assume that the other party involved is also operating in good faith. Now, I want you to think about that. What areas of your life have you been the sincere one, been the honest one, been the genuine one, trying to operate in good faith, only to discover that the people you're interacting with in some way aren't? And what's kind of the repercussion? What happens for you when you discover that? I mean, I know for a lot of us that's a really devastating thing, but it's devastating because we're operating from a flawed original assumption, which is that everybody's operating in good faith. So I think one of the most empowering, although this isn't a pleasant realization, but one of the most empowering things you can do when you're relating to the world is start with the assumption, the understanding that there are bad faith actors out there. And even if you're operating in good faith, you need to be looking out for who isn't and identifying them clearly so that you know better how to relate to them and make, appropriate choices for yourself based on that. So it's important for self-protection, for survival, for clarity, for well-being, for your peace of mind too, to really identify who's in good faith and who's in bad faith, and to get good at that, to get skillful at that. And I think this is one area where a lot of people get really screwed up in relationships, is not assuming that. And, you might be thinking, well, I don't really want to become a paranoid person who is concerned and always worried about who is or is not safe to be around or open up to or relate to in the world. To which I would say I totally understand. I totally get that. And I feel the same way. It's not a way I like to be. I like to be genuine. I like to be clear. I like to be forthright and sincere and integral in who I am and how I'm showing up. But it's so important to understand that not everybody operates that way. And some people will in certain scenarios and not in others. It's not a clean cut, good people, bad people thing. It goes much more nuanced than that, which I want to talk about here in just a moment. But I want to just kind of hammer home this point that there are a lot of bad faith actors out there. And it's really beneficial to start to identify that, to make peace with that, and to start to work with that. And this is one thing that 2020 has shown me over and over and over. I would be in one, circle or scenario, where I'm like, these people are obviously like coming, forward with kind of their own trips, with their own kind of content, projecting out on the world, projecting out on me or others around them. It's uncomfortable to be around. It sucks to engage with. And then I would kind of maybe disengage from that, and I'd, maybe plug into a different, circle of people, and then find that the same thing would happen. And so it's really important to begin to become attuned to this and monitor for this. So, yeah. So I want to be fair about this a little bit too, and nuance this conversation really quick. And that is, I want to acknowledge that I think most people, and that would include myself, that probably includes you, operate or have operated in bad faith before, or do at some point in their life. Now, why is that? Well, if we go back to kind of the definition that I offered you earlier, that bad faith interaction at the heart is being either insincere or having a hidden agenda. I would like you to reflect and just consider for a moment, what's a period of your life or a moment or an area or a relationship where you had some sort of underlying drive or desire or need or agenda that you didn't fully clearly explain and express to those around you that was driving your behavior. And if you think about it for a moment, that's most people. Most of us have some area of life, some kind of agenda or need or desire that we've operated from, whether we currently are or that was in the past, where that was what was driving our behavior more than just whatever the stated, agreed kind of context was. And I think this really kind of creates a distinction between what clean relating is and what maybe, muddy, unfair relating is. And that would be this, this sense of covert agenda, this sense of having something else driving our behavior that isn't just whatever people are expecting from us. And so I think it's important to acknowledge in ourselves where we've been bad faith actors. And it's important to acknowledge all the areas of our lives where we have some sort of covert need, fear, insecurity, desire, trip, anger, ideology, conceptual framework, projection, whatever, some sort of thing that we are putting in front of just showing up and being present and being open and being clear and allowing ourselves to engage cleanly in whatever the context is. An example that kind of came to mind that I think is kind of poignant because, I mean, it's obvious to, think about this in terms of like political ideologies and all that kind of stuff, or to think of it in terms of, narcissists, narcissistic abuse, and predatory people who take advantage of sincere people. That's all super obvious. But what's maybe a more pervasive, common form of this? One example I can think of off the top of my head is, relationships, like intimate, partner, sexual, romantic relationships, where oftentimes when a person is trying to get into a relationship, they're doing so because they have a fantasy they want to fulfill inside their head. They have some vision of their own life that they think would be this ultimate perfect experience or expression of their life. And they want to create that. They want to experience that. And most of us have that. Most of us have that sense of, I have a perfect life that I would like to create for myself. And this is what it would look like. And this is the kind of person that would be my partner or my partners, or my situation, my romantic situation in my perfect life. And then we go about trying to build relationships with people by trying to fit them into this role of being the perfect partner that we think they're close to being, or that they could be, or that they might fulfill. And this is super common. This is super pervasive. And it's also not clean. It's also not integral. It's also filled with a covert agenda, as understandable as an agenda like that would be, which is to live your best life and to feel fulfilled about your life. Doing that through trying to fit somebody else into a projection and an imagined fantasy that you have about what you think your perfect life might be is actually deeply unfair to the other person, and is a form of not coming to the relationship cleanly and clearly. By contrast, what would be good faith in a relationship might be something like two people seeing something in each other that's attractive or interesting or compelling or engaging, and just continuing to engage around it to discover what's there between them, to develop what's there between them, and explore it openly, curiously, and with whatever their agreements are between the two of them. So that might be a more kind of good faith experience of relationships. So that would be an example that we all do, where bad faith relating kind of is this pervasive thing. And I'm sure we can all think of tons of examples of different ways where we are operating out of some sort of a fantasy, a projection, a trip, a set of conclusions, and relating to the world through those filters, rather than letting those filters relax and fall away and simply being present inside of whatever situation we're in and kind of bringing the best of what we have to bear on that situation. So, point being that we all can operate in bad faith very easily. And it's really important to track that inside of ourselves and track that in our lives so that we are clear, so that we are integral and aligned, so that we are robust. And then it becomes so much easier to weed out who doesn't fit, who doesn't serve you, who doesn't relate to you, who isn't a good match for your energy and for where you're at in your life and what it is you're doing. If you're clean and clear to the contexts, and sometimes that means being in a context where you're like, I don't know, I need to explore this. I'm not sure what this is. I'm not sure what I want. I'm not, it could be an open-ended context. It doesn't all have to be defined. But being clear about your relationship to that rather than bringing a bunch of stuff to it creates good faith. Okay, so now that I've kind of called us all out as potentially bad faith actors and just kind of made us all look terrible here. I want to kind of nuance this even further because I think there's more to this. Is all shit I learned this last year. There's so much here. This is such a deep, profound lesson to really grasp and grok what it means to be in good faith, what it means to be in bad faith, and to start to see the world around you in terms of good faith, bad faith, and start to clarify all your relationships. This is so important. So I want to kind of add further so that, okay, we're being accountable for our end of good faith and bad faith, but looking out at the world, what are the dynamics there? What do we see? I want to talk a little about what I've seen and kind of just bring that home a bit for you so that maybe you don't feel so crazy, so that maybe you feel a little validated or a little understood, because it's a wild world out there. Okay, so looking at my notes really quick here. Right. So the first thing I want to say is that, I've done a lot of study, a lot of work when it comes to healing myself in terms of narcissistic abuse, codependency, all that kind of stuff. I've spent, a lot of hours looking into that kind of aspect of psychology and understanding kind of toxic, predatory personalities. And I think it's so important to start to really understand that they exist and that they're a real thing, and that generally speaking, predatory people are very skillful when it comes to relating. Boy, I could tell you some stories. I don't know if I should, but yeah, even stuff that's in the public domain in terms of people I know who are public figures who are toxic and predatory. But this is so important to get, that there are predatory people out there. There are people out there who want to take something from you and see you as a source of supply or, food or, fulfillment in some way. Not only are there people, there are institutions, there are organizations, there are whole chunks of society that operate like this, that are essentially predatory in structure, in function. And, with that, the thing is that for any intelligent predator, social predator, the first thing that generally they understand is that the best way to kind of get what they want from you is to pretend to be in good faith at first. So generally speaking, one of the ways you'll experience bad faith people is that they'll show up pretending to be in good faith. And they'll be really smooth and slick and generally very charismatic and charming about kind of luring you into their frame. Remember that whole thing I was telling you about who controls the frame, controls the interaction, right? So they'll be really slick about bringing you into their frame in a way that makes you feel validated, that makes you feel seen, that makes you feel it's gross. And then generally what they'll do is, if they're operating in bad faith, they will switch the frame. They'll switch the context on you at some point in the interaction. So instead of relating cleanly through that same agreed context, they'll shift it on you. And generally what they'll do, what I've noticed, is they'll shift it on you in a way where they are trying to out you as the bad faith person, or they're trying to kind of gotcha, kind of, aha, oh, I revealed you now. They try to, get you to be the one that outs yourself a lot of the times too. And then once you've kind of outed yourself, once you've kind of revealed yourself, or once you've kind of shown up in a way that is, makes you look bad or makes them look good, in contrast, then they'll attack you for it. Then they'll go in on you and try to tear you down and try to, destroy your sense of self, destroy your sense of reputation, poison drip you in some way. They'll try to ruin your sense of self-perception or the way other people perceive you. It's dirty. But the thing is, by the time you're there, your mind is blown, but they've already gotten kind of the upper hand by pretending to be good faith. So the way you protect yourself from these kinds of people is by noticing up front as best you can, like, how congruent are they to the context that they're kind of bringing forward to you? How faithful are they? How open are they? And usually it's an easy tell, because the people who are in bad faith will at some point start to show that they have opinions and agendas and a trip and kind of a way of being that's really obviously loaded. And as soon as it's really obviously loaded, and they're not being forthright about why they're bringing all this stuff into the space between you that you're relating through, that's a surefire sign that this is someone who's not operating in good faith. So that's important to know. So that's kind of one observation. Side note, I just want to say really quick, it really saddens me to have to make videos like this. I don't like being negative. I don't like talking about the dark side of people. But from my paradigm, from my worldview, part of awakening, part of expanding your consciousness and developing yourself and becoming more functional as a being and kind of leveling up in your consciousness is just seeing in general. So that means not only seeing all the kind of nuance and all the subtlety in life and all the beauty and all the mystery and all the, kind of amazing possibilities in life and in yourself, but it's also becoming more aware of the darkness, more aware of the dysfunction, more aware of the challenges, more aware of the setbacks and the traps and all the stuff you also need to be aware of. I think it's all just part of expanding your consciousness, part of becoming a more clear, refined being is you also become aware of the darkness. Another video on that in the future on the dark and the light side of awakening, but that's really how I see it. So hopefully this video is of value to you in the sense that it's protective, that it's supportive, that it's affirming, and that it helps you to kind of weed out these types of interactions. So getting back to it, another point that I want to make here is that it's also entirely possible, as a hypnotherapist, as someone who thinks in terms of conscious and unconscious mind a lot, I've noticed that a lot of times when people are operating in bad faith, they aren't even aware they're operating in bad faith. So this is important. It's entirely possible for a person to be in bad faith and be unconscious about that. In other words, the part of them that is acting in bad faith, that is loaded with an agenda and is insincere, they're not in touch with inside of themselves. So they're not tracking it. They're not aware of it. Their persona, if you will, if you want to use kind of a Jungian psychology perspective, their persona is presenting as this light, beautiful, sweet, sincere, honest person. Meanwhile, the content of their shadow is coming up as something, in bad faith, as something insincere, as something loaded with perspective and with an agenda that is causing them to behave in perhaps a less than comforting, safe, clear, clean way. So I say this not so much to kind of scare you or upset you, but to make it clear and even really to maybe inspire a little compassion that it's very common for people to not be in touch with themselves and tracking their own unconscious. And therefore, it's very common for people to operate in bad faith unconsciously while presenting that they're in good faith consciously. And if you call these people out, there's a really good chance they'll obviously be very offended. They'll be hurt. They'll be saddened. They'll be, they'll take it as a wound to them and probably to your relationship with them. So this is another thing to just be mindful of and watch out for, is that there are plenty of people operating in bad faith who don't know they're in bad faith. Okay, so final point I want to make here is really basic, very simple, but it's so deep. And that is that anytime that someone's operating in bad faith, whether it's you, whether it's another person, whether it's a social entity, an organization, a population, a government entity, whatever it is, anytime someone is operating in bad faith, which is much of the time, there's damage being done. And I think it's super important to, as you start to heal yourself, as you're on your own growth path and you're kind of letting go of whatever your limitations are, as you're starting to forgive maybe your past and healing, doing the work and, healing your childhood issues, as you're, self-actualizing and letting go of the places you've been wounded, what you'll see, if you look closely, what you'll notice is that someone was operating in bad faith. Whether it is you operating in bad faith from a flawed set of assumptions, whether it is someone you were in relationship to operating in bad faith and that causing some sort of a deep wound or a deep misunderstanding about life for you, whether that is someone operating bad faith at a social level in terms of, some other kind of systemic issue. Whenever there's bad faith present, I think that there's damage that happens in the relating. And I think this is super important to really deeply grasp and understand and internalize and absorb as a truth. That it's so super important to be in good faith so that we are healing, so that we are fostering trust, so that we are forging a relationship or a set of relationships or a set of connections that are clean and clear and affirmative of who we are, of who the person we're relating to is, and what life is, right? Because anytime we're misrepresenting life, anytime we're misrepresenting ourselves, let's say, with some sort of covert agenda that we're bringing to a relationship or a relating, we're by proxy misrepresenting life, and we're damaging the other person or entity's ability to trust. And that hurts the whole world. That ripples out in all kinds of subtle ways. And so I think it's super, super important to start to operate in good faith personally. And then the other side of that, I think, is begin to identify more quickly, more easily, who's operating in bad faith outside of us, so that we can start to make wise decisions, whatever that might be, whether that's distancing, whether that's fully disconnecting, whether that is, outing them if need be. I'm not a fan of that kind of thing, but there's sometimes that needs to happen, or, whatever it is. Really, once we kind of create this clarity, we need to operate from it to minimize the damage in our own lives and minimize the damage in other people's lives and in the world in general. This is super important. This is so vital. And I really think this is one of those, there are many reasons why the world is fucked up, right? There are many reasons why things are crazy, why things are screwy and getting worse. One of those reasons, this isn't the only reason, this isn't the sum total of it, but one of these reasons is that there's so many people acting in bad faith. And what I've found, now that I'm aware of this, now that I'm attuned to this, is that it becomes so much easier because I know who to trust, and I'm always watching for who shows up as cleanly inside the context that I have with those people and those relationships as they can. And those are the people I trust, and those are the people I'm building with. Those are the people I'm leaning into in terms of relationships in my life. And, looking back, there are other, people in my past, in my history, that did not operate in good faith, that operated in bad faith. And that explains so much of why those relationships were toxic or painful, created more suffering, or left a lasting kind of damage for me to heal and resolve in myself. So, yeah. And I think 2020, if you look back at it and you really think about your experience of it, and you think about what happened in the world with, the coronavirus, with all the social unrest, with all the kind of political kind of stuff that went on, I think it's really very clear that there was a lot of bad faith acting happening. And so I just want to encourage you to start to awaken to this, to just start to attune to it, start to recognize it, and use this as a tool in your life to start to make better decisions for yourself, to start to maybe course correct your own behaviors, or course correct and resolve, what's the stuff you're carrying that you're using, projecting onto the world around you that is causing damage or distorting your relationships that maybe you could let go of or resolve or find some way to kind of heal and release yourself from, so that you're more fully present in the moment, being your full, complete self. I think psychedelics, to contextualize this in the conversation on this channel, which is about psychedelics and the work that we're doing with growing in self-actualization through psychedelics and mystical experiences, I think that psychedelics point us to lots of places where we are often, maybe in bad faith, maybe out of alignment, maybe could deepen the clarity and the cleanliness of how we relate to the world. And then the task becomes, how do we align the meat suit? How do we align the animal? How do we align the habituated physical body, urges and impulses and intuitions? In other words, how do we align the unconscious mind with what it is that we've learned consciously through these moments of kind of psychedelic breakthrough. Um, if you've had any of those experiences, maybe just start thinking about that. Start thinking about, okay, my higher self, my deeper self has communicated to me all these ways that I could be a better human, that I could be more in alignment, that I could be more truthful, that I could be more honest, that I could be more generous, that I could be more relaxed, whatever it is. And then think about how you could start to integrate and what it would be like to integrate those behaviors and that way of being into your daily life. I do think psychedelics point us towards good faith relating. And I think that's because good faith relating is ultimately affirmative of life, like I already said. So, yeah, I'm going to end it there. I know I've rambled. I do have a tendency to make long videos. Hopefully, you got something out of this. Hopefully, this was maybe eye-opening for you, or affirming for you, or empowering for you in some way. If so, do me a favor, leave a comment below, interact, let me know what you thought. And maybe, let me know what your experience of bad faith and good faith relationships are, what you've seen around this, or if this is all new to you, and what kind of thoughts this is kind of bringing up for you, what insights this might be bringing up for you. And if you feel like it, if you're resonating with me and with the content here, I would be honored if you would, give a thumbs up, give a like to the video, possibly subscribe to the channel. There's going to be much more content like this. We're going to be much more not only frequent in the videos, but I'm going to be starting to go deeper into specifics, giving you clearer tools and techniques, and really kind of opening stuff up and getting into some really juicy content here. So let me know what you think. And I hope you enjoyed this. This has been a long time coming. I've been meaning to get this video out. I've got more on the way. I've got a lot more to share. So much love, all the best to you, and thanks for watching if you made it this far. Peace.